Hey everyone, and welcome to the Retro channel. And yes, as we're still in Tandy, we're going to look at some more Tandys. Today we're checking out the Color Computer 2 and also the Dragon32. These are both hopefully going to get S-Video modifications, especially the Coco 2 as it only comes with an RF output. So we definitely need something more modern for that. And the Dragon32 actually does have composite video output, so it's not so much of a priority to get S-Video from a Dragon32, but we may as well have a look, see what we can do. Now for the Coco 2, I've already figured out what we're going to need for this circuit, and it is very simple, even easier than the Coco 1 that I showed last time. And if you haven't seen that video, it might be worth checking out because I do go through a lot of the differences in the video signals and PAL versus NTSC, that kind of thing. I'm not going to do that again this time. We're just going to get straight into this mod. So all we're going to need is a 4.7K resistor, a 0.47 microfarad capacitor, and a 220 microfarad capacitor. That is it for the Coco 2. Hold up, let's make that 4 components. We're also going to need a 1.8K resistor, and I'll explain why shortly. Now keep in mind this is the PAL version, so it will be different for NTSC ones, and I'm still waiting on one to arrive from the States. So eventually one day I'll hopefully have an NTSC solution for the Coco 2, but for now it's just going to be for the PAL machine. And on that note, this one is one of the shorter revision boards. Some of the earlier Coco 2s come in a very similar case to the Coco 1s. So you can see there is quite a size difference. So basically the early Coco 2s look like this, but they're just in this wider color case. This sort of more modern revision, this sort of newer revision actually more resembles the Coco 3 case. So it's quite short. And if we look on the back, there's even this cutout here, which I think on the Coco 3 is where you'd add the, I think it does RGB out, and there's a little module that you need to actually get that going. So let's put the Dragon32 aside for now, and we'll just focus on the Coco 2. Alright, so what we're going to do is just whip off the cover. I've already taken the screws out just to make things a bit simpler, and remove the keyboard, which is one of these sort of membrane types, so you want to be careful not to flex it too much. And here's our tiny little main board. Definitely a massive difference compared to the Coco 1, and the power supply is greatly simplified. I think these things only run off 5 volts, so yeah, very simple. What we're going to do first is remove this RF modulator. That's going to create some room for us. And once again, like the Coco 1, I've just made up a little S-Video and RCA socket adapter. I did have to extend it for this one. I normally use these type things and just chop the ends off, but the S-Video wasn't long enough, so I actually had to make a little extension and bodge that up. So that needs to run to this area of the board, and the audio signals are going to come up from this area. We're not going to do this on the underside of the board. I'm just going to do it from the top side. And I've put some little, again, a little rubber grommet. And I think I mentioned last time these were like 5 centimeters or something ridiculous. The inner diameter of the actual grommet part is 12.7 millimeters. So what's that, ½ an inch? So yeah, look out for one of those if you want to do the mod this way. I mean, otherwise you could maybe have a DIN socket in this area and use your own cables, or just run full length cables out of the case, whatever works for you. Let's warm up the desoldering gun and take this board out. And I better put my anti-static wrist strap on / ankle strap. There's 2 screws here, and I think 2 screws holding the cartridge expansion port. I think that is it. Yes. Oh yeah, of course we need to disconnect the power supply. If it will come out. It is keyed, but I have also written which connector goes where, just in case I try and force it or do something stupid. So let's move this and the keyboard out of the way. Focus on the main board. All right, here we go. So it's held in by these few tabs here. Right. Hey, here we go. Finally. Cool. Now, we've got plenty of room, so our cables are going to run out through this area, which is where the RF modulator would normally sit, and out through the back of the case. Now we just need to install a few little components. So in a similar fashion to the Coco 1 mod, we're going to prevent the chroma signal being mixed in with the luma signal, and that'll give us our two S-video, separate video signals. So first thing I'm going to do is lift the leg of this resistor down here, which is what connects our chroma into the luma. And I'm just going to do this again with a pick from the top side of the board and just heat that joint and lift. Right. So that resistor can just float around if you like. You can put a bit of heat shrink over it, whatever. That right there where the resistor was connected is going to be our chroma output, and the signal does not need any help on this one, so we can connect our chroma line from the S-video straight into where that resistor was. Just like that. Now the luma and sync, we're actually tapping that from this little op amp over here. So I'm going to put a little blob of solder on pin 6 of this guy. Or is that pin 7? Pin 7, sorry. It already has the correct amplitude, but it does have a DC offset. So we're going to use the 220 microfarad capacitor just to remove that DC offset from the signal. And the little op amp can happily drive an output signal, so we don't have to worry about buffering it or anything. So that's all we need to do for the S-video signal on this particular PAL revision. We lift this 1.5K resistor and solder our chroma to the left leg. We attach a 220 microfarad capacitor to this op amp on pin 7, and the negative forms our luma output, and we just find a suitable ground. In this case, I've used the left side of this capacitor here, which is on this big ground plane. Right, so future me, just to explain what the 1.8K resistor is for that I mentioned earlier, it's actually to set up the proper contrast levels. So the video signal and the luma signal is a little bit on the low side on the Coco 2. This is just going to enhance that and pretty much bring us up to the right signal levels. Now the position that it's going to go in is R48, so there's normally a 1.2K resistor there. On the schematics, I think it's listed as R12, so again, schematics, who knows. But you can find it by checking continuity from pin 12 of the 1372. You should find that there's a 1.2K ohm resistor connected directly to that somewhere in this vicinity. Now the reason for this was I was briefly chatting with another YouTuber, and he mentioned that the contrast that he saw after doing a simple composite mod to his machine looked a bit on the low side, and after I investigated I found the same thing. So coming up shortly you'll see that I've got a comparison shot where we look at the color bars, and I'll include the before and after this little extra component is added so you can see the difference. For the audio, we actually require a couple of extra components. So there's a 0.47 microfarad capacitor and our 4.7K resistor. The capacitor is just to remove the DC offset from the audio signal, and we're going to attach that to pin 1 of this SC77526. That's pretty solid. And then our resistor is going to connect to the negative leg of that. Finally, the audio ground, we're just going to use part of where the RF modulator was. So this spot here should be just fine. Just going to put a blob of solder on there. Make sure that's nice and secure. Cool, that's it. Now, there isn't much strain relief here, so we're going to rely on the actual grommet and these little cable ties to stop things being pulled and pushed in and out of the case. Hopefully that will hold up, but I'm sure there's a better way of doing it where we could sort of mount a very low PCB and put a DIN socket on the output to run our signals through, but this will do for most cases, I guess. Let's grab the case. Move that out of the way. That's gonna sit back in there. Reconnect our power. Carefully connect the keyboard. I should have put those screws back in. Cool. I don't think that's going anywhere. And it's not pulling on the actual solder joints inside the machine. So without further ado, let's power it on and test it out. Yeah. Right, so I've turned off most of the lights except for the one on this camera, and looking at the display on the TV, it looks great. It may not look as sharp in the camera. There might be some interference in that, but from here it looks pretty much perfect. Now, it's not a big surprise because the video circuitry in the Coco 2 is very much simplified. So we don't have all those adjustments that we have in the Coco 1 to set up the border luma levels and all that kind of thing. There's pretty much only one little trimmer just for the color crystal, but it looks like it's set pretty much correct. So let's just do a quick test with our color bars. And yep, from here they look solid. I don't know if they look as good on the camera, but can't fault that image at all. And we better check out our sound output. We might use the sound test this time. Oh yeah, that sounds brilliant. Sounds like there's a SID inside this machine. Which is weird. There is a SID inside this machine. It's not even socketed. No, this is actually a demo for the Coco. It pretty much only works on the Coco 2, or probably the Coco 3. It doesn't seem to work on the Coco 1. Some machines it does, but some it doesn't. But yeah, this is the Commando theme song on the Commodore 64 being played back on a Coco 2. Now, the image on the display is completely locked because it's pretty much dedicating all the processing power to just playing this tune, basically. But it is pretty impressive considering the sound capabilities of the Coco 2 and the Coco for that matter, that it can even come close to emulating what a SID would sound like. So yeah, that's brilliant. I'll obviously leave a link below to where you can find this one. So, on that note, let's just move this out of the way. We'll leave it playing. Let's take a look at the Dragon32. Now this actually belongs to Jason, aka Mr. Lurch. He just lent it out to me just so I could play around with it. And I need a bigger bench. Should be able to put that down there. Alright. The Dragon32. Gotta take the screws out first. I think this is actually the full track as well for the Commando theme. It doesn't sound exactly like a SID, but you know, they're pretty impressive for the Coco. Alright, I've got some notes to myself. So I did work out how to separate the luma and the chroma in this machine. But unfortunately, I found the chroma does need to be buffered. Now, there is a little problem with this in that the chroma signal on these it actually has a -5 volt bias. So it would take a bit more effort to actually get the correct chroma level, but I'll show you at least how far I've gotten. Is that enough, Commando? I think this is the end of the track anyway. Ah, that's better, I can see again. So the video circuitry in the Dragon32 actually gets output as composite video, and it does also have an RF modulator, but I doubt anyone uses that anymore. Now, we can split the luma and chroma from being mixed, and the actual luma signal is pretty much a low impedance output, so we don't even have to buffer that. The issue is the chroma signal isn't actually strong enough to send to a display. Now it will work, but it will basically reduce the chroma signal as soon as you hook it up to a 75 impedance load like a TV display. It'll pretty much crush that chroma signal down to almost nothing. So it's not powerful enough to drive a display. And sort of because of that, I don't know if it's going to be that simple to actually buffer that chroma signal. To be honest, it hurts my brain. I know it's possible to do, but because it's a negative voltage that it's biased at, do we use ground potential as like a positive voltage, or do we use +5 as the positive voltage and work out the resistance divider circuit between that? To be honest, I don't know, but I'll give you a look at what this actually looks like on a display unbuffered. So all we need to do here is actually lift the leg of this resistor here, just near these two transistors. That is where our chroma meets the luma signal. So if we lift that up, that will separate the chroma and luma. So you can actually tap the luma and sync off this final resistor up here on the end that's closest to this connector. I guess it's only a 10 ohm resistor, so you could tap it from either side. It's not really going to make a difference. And you can send that straight to a display. That'll work just fine. But yeah, as I was saying, the chroma signal is another kettle of fish. Let's just hook up a simple S-video cable and I'll just show you what we get. So yeah, I've just turned the camera around. I haven't bothered turning off the lights in the room this time or trying to focus it on the screen, because while it looks really sharp, there is a lot of noise in that image as well. And as I said, if we actually hook up the chroma, we do get color, but it is pretty washed out. Now, like I said, we could design a circuit, but it'd be a bunch of extra components. And to be honest, I mean, you already get composite video from these. So sure, S-video will help with, you know, the sharpness and everything, but I don't know if it's worth it or not. And because we've separated the chroma and luma, we're now only going to have black and white if we try and use the composite video out. So for the Dragon32, I'd probably just say stick with composite. If you really want to go on the upgrade path, look at the RGB to HDMI project for these. I'm pretty sure it works with the Dragon32. I'm pretty sure there's even instructions in the GitHub page somewhere, so that would be my suggestion for the Dragon32. And just for reference, this is what the default composite signal looks like, and it looks pretty decent. I mean, it's not as sharp as the S-video, but it's still fairly decent. So if anyone wants to try and attempt this mod, I'd start by lifting up this resistor here, just to separate the luma and chroma. You can pretty much hook the luma and sync directly to the display. You've just got to figure out how to buffer the chroma signal. But yeah, I don't know if it's really worth it, to be honest. Anyway, that is half a mod to a Dragon32. Sorry I didn't get any further, but I am going to return this to Jason once I clean up the mess that I've made here. But before I do that, we're actually going to take a proper look at the Coco SDC, because this does work with both the Coco and the Dragon machines. And we're also going to look at a joystick adapter so we don't have to use these things. These are terrible analog joysticks. I mean, they are good for games that require an analog joystick, but a lot of games, especially the ones I prefer to play, work better with a digital joystick, like you'd get with the Atari and Commodore 64, that kind of thing. So we're going to look at a couple of quality of life upgrades, so to speak. A joystick adapter, so we can use a decent joystick like maybe the Slick Stick or one of those Competition Pros up there, and not this horrible thing. And of course, check out how the Coco SDC works with both the Dragon32 and the Coco. We'll look at how to set these up and where you can get them from. So I guess the only main machine to look at in this little family is the NTSC Coco 2, which we'll take a look at when it eventually arrives. But yeah, we'll look at some quality of life upgrades first. So a massive thanks to everyone who supports the channel. Thanks to my multimeter for beeping at me. And thank you all for watching. You can support the channel, which, fuck.